Kia ora, Te Kapanga. Welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Tēnā koe, Vincent. Ko te Kapunga Dewes ahau e uri tēnei no Ngāti Porou, no te Aroa whānui, no te whakatōhia. Ko au te tō, te rangatira o tētai kamupene, ko Whenua Oho tērā. Ko au te hea mana o ngā Papatūānuku, the National Maōri Forestry Association. Nā reira, tērā ngā tūranga oku, kia kōrerotia e pāna ki te kaupapa nei. So my name is Te Kapunga. I'm from the East Coast. I'm from Central Bay of Plenty and Eastern Bay of Plenty. I am the tō, which is actually the stalk or the trunk, depending on what you want to, what interpretation of a company that we started called Whenua Oho, which helps empower Māori landowners into forestry, and I'm also the chair of Ngā Pauatane, which is the National Māori Forestry Association. Tērā, ko au tērā. That's me.
Kia ora, thanks TK. Can you explain why some Māori landowners are arguing in favour of permanent exotic forests?
Probably best to start at a baseline level, I think. And that is one of, I guess, underlying principles, underlying values. And one of those, and only one, because there's many, is the concept of kaitiakitanga, which has been hijacked a little over time to be talking about things like stewardship and guardianship. In fact, kaitiakitanga has a much deeper meaning than that, and that is around the responsibility and the authority of those who are of the land for water quality, erosion control, wealth generation, social outcomes, with a focus for future generations. So at least as good as, if not better, for future generations. I participate and I engage with it. It is part of me and I'm part of it. It's not something that I'm managing or master of. It's something that's intrinsic to me, which is where Māori have the concept of whakapapa with land. And because of that, we don't silo. We don't silo in terms of conservation value or social value or wealth generation or protection of biodiversity. We want to talk about all of it because they're all interrelated as far as we're concerned. There is no ability to just silo out stuff. We also need profit. So we rely on our land to provide us wealth generation activity. And I guess I've left it for last, but you could easily shuffle it to the front or the back. Hea te mea nui o te ao, he tangata, he tangata, he tangata, people. So that land can't exist in isolation of people. People need to be integrated and woven into the fabric of the land and our whakapapa with it. To talk about wealth creation in the same context as conservation values, in the same context as social value, we're really comfortable to jump between all of them all at the same time.
You've actually got a very interesting whakatauki about the right that whenua grants you. Can you share that whakatauki with us?
So this is one that was a grand uncle of mine, my grandfather's best friend, Sir Api Mahuika. Noku te whenua kei aho te kōrero. And if you translate that literally, it says, it's my land, therefore I have the say. That's a literal translation. The deeper and less literal translation for that, and what he actually meant in that whakatauki is that, I'm of this land, and this land is intrinsically connected with me. I have the authority, and it's my responsibility to have to say what happens on it, as opposed to, at times, albeit well-wishers from afar, trying to tell us what might be best for us.
You've just described a wonderful framework for ownership and growth, but that also, does that imply a transition at some point to native trees and native ngāhere?
Probably worth saying that all Māori don't have one homogeneous view. So there are a number of views on a number of these particular points. Our indigenous forests that exist in Aotearoa, for which we claim to resonate with, at a spiritual level. Our gods created exotic trees too. They may not be of this land, but they are of this planet. And they have value in and of themselves, but dare I say, from a spiritual perspective, from a Maōri perspective, certainly not as much value as an indigenous forest. The second point is I don't know if I've ever met a Māori that wouldn't prefer their land to be recloaked, recladded in indigenous. I work directly with Māori landowners to get into forestry, and without exception, they would prefer indigenous forests if they were capable of doing that. On the counter side to that, what we have is a number of constructs which are barriers for us to achieve that. Firstly, we used to own 27 million hectares. Fast forward to today, we only own less than 5% of that. Of that 1.6 million hectares, 80% is land use classification 6 to 8. Means it's like that. It's erodible, but we love it nonetheless. We just find it very difficult to make any money from it. We're a distribution curve, not a one voice. So get 1,000 Māori in a room, we are not going to agree on everything. It makes it very, very difficult to sell land. Not a bad thing in my personal view, but makes it exceptionally difficult. Not impossible, but very, very difficult. As a result of that, we can't secure against it. If you can't secure against it, you can't loan against it. Therefore, the ability to attract finance to sustainably develop our steep, erodible, backblock land is exceptionally difficult. The carbon economy or carbon financing is the first thing we've seen for some time that has the capability to attract investment into our land for the purpose of afforestation. It's all very well for people to talk about what the incentives might be next year or the year after or 5 years from now or so on and so forth, but they don't exist right now. What exists right now is the ability to carbon finance our aspiration for indigenous forests. Unfortunately, and I will say unfortunately, that is precipitated by the use of exotic forests and exotic plantation forests in order to facilitate a transition from an exotic forest into a native forest. The exotic forest attracts the investment. The exotic forest attracts the carbon sequestration elements. So the exotic forests enliven. And then that gives us the ability to transition that into native forests. So our aspirations are for indigenous, but our pathway, unfortunately, with the current settings and the current environment, is through carbon financing, which utilises exotics. Planting an exotic forest, attracting investment to pay for all of that and provide an income stream for us for the next 50 to 75 years based on the existing ETS is a godsend, and one that we're very comfortable to fight tooth and nail for in the void of another solution. Do we want another solution? Absolutely. Do we value indigenous forests? Completely. And yet we will absolutely fight tooth and nail for exotics in the permanent category because that enables us to get to an indigenous forest through a pathway, through a necessary evil.
So what hope do you have for the future?
Our sense is there's a bit of a convergence in Aotearoa at the moment. Things like mātauranga, Maōri, tikanga and rongoā are all starting to be recognised. So I'm very, very excited. We're in a climate emergency. We want our kids to be around, our great-grandkids to be around. I want them to be thriving, not just existing. And it's our responsibility to get on with this now. We just need more trees, lots more trees. Yes, we need to deal with gross emissions, but we just also need a lot more trees and preferably a lot more native.